Okay, I can see some people experienced technical problems. It would be very useful for us if you could email us later and let us know what exactly was the problem. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, I will be closing the polls in a minute, and I will give the floor to Judith Heiberg, who will tell us a bit about the Promise project and about two Barnahus standards we're going to cover today, and then she will guide the discussion with our remaining three panelists. Judith, you can start, and meanwhile I will put the presentation and close the polls.
Thank you so much for this introduction. I am Turid, and I work with the Council of Baltic Sea States. As maybe many of you know, it's the Council of the Baltic Sea States who is managing the Promise project together with the Child Circle. And it was also us and a whole range of partners who established the European Barnahus movement in 2017. So the Promise project is guided by a vision document where we underline the right of children anywhere and everywhere to be protected against violence. And in this vision document, children's rights to be heard, supported, and protected against re-traumatizing are very important principles. Currently, we are focusing on supporting 10 countries, and in fact even many more, but 10 countries in Maine to get the roadmaps, to have meetings with all the stakeholders, to have capacity building and other forms of training, in addition to all these communication activities where these webinars, the series of webinars is part of enforced communication activities. On the plan for Promise 2, we are in the second phase, is also to develop a methodology for involving children in and their views in the whole running of the Barnahus. We started the Promise project in 2015, and it was a very good startup, I would say. It was like officials and professionals in so many countries were just waiting for somebody to come and connect the dots, to be there to connect all these activities into a systematic and holistic enterprise. As a result, as I said before, the European Barnahus movement was established. We also, in a way, consolidated Barnahus, the Icelandic and Swedish wording for the children's house, as the name for, as somehow the concept name for children's house in Europe. Though, of course, many, at national level, many Barnahus or similar setups have their own names, but Barnahus we want to have as an internationally acknowledged concept for the Barnahus setup. Also, Barnahus or Children's House setup has been accepted as a good practice, not only by Promise Project and Promise Project partners, but also Council of Europe. The Lanzarote Committee is constantly also agitating for the Barnahus, and also the European Union. Barnahus is seen as a way of having integrated services for children. As you can see on this slide, we developed during Promise 1 a whole range of reports and guidelines and so on for anyone setting up Barnahus or wanting to understand more about it. And primarily we have the Barnahus quality standards, who goes through all the essential standards upon which a Barnahus has to build. Then we have a tracking tool, which is a way to look into how Barnahus works internally. Then we have Enabling Child-Sensitive Justice, a publication going through the development of Barnahus in Europe, the beginning, and also a very important compendium on law and guidance. And lastly, we also have an advocacy report or setup. Here on this slide, you can see a little bit about all those who are currently involved in Promise 2. In Promise 1, we had many other countries as well, like Malta, Lithuania, and some others. And even today, we are supporting many others in addition to these with what they need to get going. Yeah. Today you have already introduced the other speakers today, but we have Anna Maria Spanik from Zagreb in Croatia. We have Anders Forsberg from Barnahus in Stockholm, and we have Olof Åsta Farestveit from Iceland, Barnahus in Iceland. And I guess Olof is the one who has been with us the longest, who is somehow a core of Barnahus. So she is a special resource in every situation, but all of the presenters have extensive experiences. Today we are going to talk about two standards in this the range of quality standards, and that's Standard 2 and Standard 5. And those deal with one of the most important standards. It's about cooperation and collaboration. Standard 2 is about how you have some kind of legal foundation, some kind of officially recognized foundation in the country, where the different agencies working together from law enforcement, social, health, etc., where they come together in an officially acknowledged way of cooperation. And then in Standard 5, we in fact deal with exactly the same, but in relation to case management. And in case management, you also need the routines and regulations for how you deal with the case together, the different agencies, who is responsible. A certain person needs to be appointed to be responsible for follow up the case, all to its end. And here also data protection laws comes in. How do you ensure the confidentiality, the sensitivities regarding the child, while at the same time being able to share important data among the agencies? And these three speakers are going to elaborate on these two standards. So Standard 2 here and Standard 5 in this document, who is also available for you later on. Yes, so then we, I think with no more words from me, we should just start. And I would like to ask you, Olof, first to talk a little bit about how things happens in Iceland. Iceland was established as the first Barnahus in 1998. And has somehow been an inspiration for all the other, the growth of Barnahus in Europe as such. So how do you, Olof, handle the interagency cooperation? How is it manifesting in new legal setup? And how do you build trust, commitment, and ways of working together at an early stage? And how, at an early stage of when you set up barnahus, and how have they developed over years? So please, Åsta, Olof, the word is yours.
The Icelandic Barnahus, as you said, was opened 1st of November 1998, so we are nearly 20 years old now. Barnahus is operated by the Government Agency of Child Protection in Iceland, and the government agency should promote interdisciplinary collaboration and strengthening coordination of agency in child protection cases. And government agency is under the Ministry of Welfare. The Icelandic Barnahus was a pilot project for 2 years in the beginning. And in the beginning, the Icelandic Barnahus was set up without any formal regulations. And Barnahus was focusing on child sexual abuse cases against children. And after 2015, we started with physical abuse cases, and 2016 we also started interview unaccompanied children using our interview technique to understand their story. The interviewers in Iceland are trained as forensic interviewers, but they have background in children's development, like psychologists or sociologues or with similar education. And in the beginning, there was some informal agreement between different agencies, like the University Hospital in Reykjavik, the state prosecutor, and the police, and the Child Protection Service. The University Hospital thought it was the best way to have the medical examinations in the hospital, but by the importance was that we promoted the best technical equipment in Barnahus. We had the video corposcope, which wasn't in the University Hospital. And there was some informal agreement with the hospital that every other Wednesday, the pediatrician, the nurse, and the gynecologist would come if we had any cases for them to do this medical examination. The state prosecutor was, from the beginning, I think, all in, because they thought that the interview of the children and investigation of children's sexual abuse cases was not good enough here in Iceland in 1997 and 1998. And in the beginning, the police was supposed to be located in Barnahus. So they were all in. So they would be specialized in sexual abuse cases, because we, in the beginning, thought we had very few cases. And Child Protection Service was also on board, because we had a lot of Child Protection Service all around Iceland, and there was a lack of knowledge in those cases. So they were very happy that we opened. But the most important thing is that Barnahus always offer the best equipment, both in the interview technique and technology around the technique in interviewing, and also for the medical examination. But unfortunately, we had many changes in our law, and the changes in law in 1999 in May. And we changed the law in that way that the interview should be done under the auspice of court judge, and with support of special trained people regarding children up to 18 who are victims of sexual abuse. And we also have done further changes in law 2008, where the court judge is only involved in interview cases regarding children under the age of 15. And now the police is interviewing children 15 to 18 in a police station in a special equipped room. But yeah, a lot of law changes has been done under since we opened Barnahus. In the Icelandic law, you can find that if children are victims of crime, they should be debriefed in a specially equipped room with a special trained interviewer, but it's in the hand of the court judge for children younger than 15 where the child should be interviewed and who is the specialist, because Barnahus, for example, is not mentioned in the law. The courtroom of Reykjavik, all the courts got money when we changed the law in 1999, and the courtroom of Reykjavik made a room for interviewing children in the courthouse in Reykjavik. But the other courtrooms, they had IT linked to Barnahus because they wanted to use Barnahus back in the old days. And the courtroom of Reykjavik, they used court judges or police to interview children, but they recommended the Minister of Justice. Minister of Justice in around 2012 or 13 wrote a letter to all judges in Iceland and recommended that they should use the best practice, which was Barnahus in that case. And also we had some changes in generation, the judges court judge generation. And now all judges are using Barnahus. The trust is something which is very important because Barnahus gained trust among everyone: court judge, prosecutors, police, child protection service, defense lawyers, and child legal advocate. But it took time. We gained the trust over the period of time by using evidence-based protocol, by interviewing children and showing them the importance of child-friendly settings, child-friendly equipment, child-friendly house, where the child feels secure, and to lower their anxiety and to help them to disclose about abuse. We also had some lectures for the judges and for the people working in the law field. The cooperation between different agencies has also built trust among others, and also among the public, among people working with children in different professions. And in this cooperation between different agencies, we also build trust among others, where you discuss each case and we are aiming for the best result. But as I said earlier, it took time to gain that trust. Before we interview children, for example, we had a meeting with the Child Protection Service, with the police and the prosecutor about the case and what we already know about the case, what is important questions to ask before we interview the child, and next step in the case. For example, if the Child Protection Service needs to take the child from the home, and we can also have some meetings after the interview to take next steps in cases. The cooperation between different agencies continues through the child when the child is connected to Barnahus. When they are in therapy, the cooperation continues with the Child Protection Service, especially because the Child Protection Service is supposed to be in charge of each case, and also continues with the police, the child legal advocate, and the prosecutor, of course, if the case goes all the way to the courtroom. So I would say, in the end, cooperation is the most important part in our work, except for the working with the child. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Olof. It seems like you have a lot of achievements. Apart from being the first Barnahus, you have now all the judges uses Barnahus. since 2015, you extended to so many different groups of children exposed to violence. The only thing is that Barnahus, did I understand you correctly, that Barnahus was only used for children from 15 and below? Otherwise, it's the police who have special rooms where they talk with the children?
Right, because but of course all children up to age of 18 can get therapy, but just the interview are done at the police station if the child is 15 to 18 because of the changes in law. But now, of course, it's debate in Iceland that all children should be interviewed in Barnahus again. The police in the beginning thought they could do it quicker because usually when you have older children or teenagers, it's very often acute cases. But what we have seen is that we interview children, 50% of children within a week from the case was reported to the police. So that is not the case, that it takes more time to involve the judge.
Thank you. Is there any questions now?
No, not right now.
Not right now. Okay. So then I think we say thank you for now, but please hold on. There may come questions in the end. Thank you so much. Now we would like to hear from Anders and Stockholm Barnahus, because you have different formal...
Oh, wait, we have a poll question.
We have a poll question. Just a second. So, do you think that your country needs to make changes in the law before you can establish Barnahus? Now the poll is coming up. So the question was, do you think that your country needs to make changes in the law before you can establish Barnahus? So it seems like quite a few, more than, or quite half of the countries represented think they have probably adequate laws, while quite a few think they need to amend the laws in order to have a proper foundation for Barnahus. Yes, then let's move on and go to Anders, as we introduced. And Anders, can you tell a little bit about the formal agreements relevant in the Stockholm Barnahus and how you cooperate, how the agency collaborate there? And can you also tell us a little bit about the background, how your agreement is structured, and why you think it has been important for you to have this kind of arrangement? So over to you, Anders.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me into this conference. The Barnahus Stockholm that I come from is one of about 30 Barnahus in Sweden. Does everyone hear me loud and clear? Okay? Hopefully. The Barnahus in Sweden are based mainly on the children's advocacy model from United States, and of course very much is very similar to what Olaf told us about the Icelandic Barnahus. The first center in Sweden started in 2004, and today, as I said, about 30 centers in Sweden. But they have all developed, and this is kind of a challenge in Sweden because we have very strong municipalities that are very much making their own legislation. So they have developed bit differently depending on local conditions, engagement, and variation between. It's pretty big. They could differ in terms of size, organization, and financing. And also we're working a lot to get some national standards and guidelines for the barnahus in Sweden. But Barnahus Stockholm is pretty unique, has a pretty unique structure even in Sweden, because Barnahus in Stockholm, we used to say it's the largest barnahus in Europe, but we have co-located all the disciplines. So we are about 80 people working at the barnahus at a daily basis, but there are mostly all the police officers and police employees who work with crime against children are actually sitting in the Barnahus Stockholm. So it's about 50 to 55 police officers working in Barnahus Stockholm. And of course, we have one Barnahus in Stockholm with about 1.2 million citizens in our district. So it's pretty big. But we have in Stockholm, it's a long way how to get to this decision about having one big barnahus. We have a long history from 2004 with a small barnahus just in an apartment, and then in 2014 we opened the Barnahus Stockholm with a brand new model of how to work together. So it's about, as I told you, it's about 80 people here every day. And it's the police, about 55 police officers. We are 7 psychologists. We have 8 social workers. And then we have doctors and nurses, and now also a forensic dentist working in the barnahus. But we have found, I think we have come a long way now to find a model of working together with good agreements, transparent guidelines, with a lot of respect from each other disciplines. And we have every week we have a minor MDT meetings. So every case that goes to Barnahus should be passed all the disciplines in some way. And of course, in Barnahus, as we are so big, we have about 1,200 cases in the Barnahus Stockholm a year. And I think that's also different from a lot of other countries, that we have so much physical abuse. And I think we have about 25%, as you can see in the slide, the blue one is sexual abuse, and it's about 25 to 27% sexual abuse that we work with. So mostly it's physical abuse. And the Swedish law, as you know, is very strict against the physical child abuse. So we have a very low level, I think, when cases go to police report for physical abuse. So we have a lot of physical abuse, and I think that's different from other countries. But I think now we have a structure that is working very well. We have a lot of learning from each other. We have lessons together when we talk to the prosecutors or social child protection services. We do it together. We have a prosecutor, police, and a social service members going out and have lectures from others to others. But I think all children who comes to Barnahus Stockholm, they are seen from all the disciplines. I think I stop there.
Thank you, Anders. It was very many details. Thank you. And you very interesting this about that you also have included dentists. I think quite many partners have done that by now. So that is supplementary help in identifying and assessing the abuse. You said you have many, most of the cases are physical abuse. Do you have an estimate of what kind of cases are they? Are they all criminal? Are they all going for legal investigation, or some are going to child protection? What would be the ratio? What severity are we talking about?
I think in Sweden, as I said, we have a very low level when we do reports to police about child abuse, physical child abuse. So all the cases that we are working with in Barnahus are also a case at the police. We're just working with the reported cases to the police.
Okay, there's questions from the audience.
Thank you. Now we have a question from the audience.
What the 9% and the 10%?
What does it mean, the 9% and the 10%? In your
that could be like internet-related cases or mostly internet-related cases.
Online abuse, you mean?
Yeah, I think that, or just offense or threats or something like that.
Right.
Is that just the 9%? But what about the 10%?
What about the 10%?
That's more like it's like physical abuse, but harassment and maybe not just physical abuse, but more of threats and harassment.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Poll questions?
Yeah. Then we go to the poll question. And was it 2 poll questions here? Yeah. The first one: in your barnahus or similar setup, is your now we are talking to all those of you who are listening. Is your barnahus or similar setup co-located with law enforcement and child protection system, medical and health? Do you think it would be possible in your country? So is it co-located, and do you think it would be possible? Yeah. I think we let it go here. Okay, another one. Overwhelming no, and overwhelmingly no and no, and yes and yes. Not co-located in Ireland. It would be, though it would be possible with a lot of planning and collaboration. That at least there is positive, and here is more. Yes, in my country we put it in criminal procedure, amendment for child-friendly investigation, and in another it's not co-located currently. Believe it is possible, but a lot of work to do it. Then we congratulate those who are on their good way, and we will be supportive of those who need it for those who need more follow-up. We have another poll question. How do we?
She needs to move the.
Yep. That is this poll question. Do you have a good model for how? You wanted to say something, Anish?
No, maybe that's for the next one, really. The next.
Yeah, that should be for the next one. Okay, we save it. And then we are on to Croatia. Not a bad European trip this, from Iceland to Croatia. Just a small landing in Stockholm before traveling on. Anna Maria, you also have such a long experience with Barnahus, for what you call the Child and Youth Protection Center of Zagreb. Tell us a little bit more about the key elements of interagency collaboration around case management. So we are getting more to the practical level. Will you elaborate? And also, if you could say something about the data protection laws that you apply in the case when you have several agencies working around the case. So Anna Maria, please, the word is yours.
Thank you, Turid, for a question. I'm really glad. If you can hear me well, just write it down in chat so that I know that everything is fine with the sound. I'm really glad that we have participants from India, from the States, from Bulgaria, Slovakia, Romania. I can see also here. I'm really glad to see this wide audience. Please, if you have any questions, write it in a chat for the discussion afterwards. All of them, and Anders have already pointed out many key points in this field. What I really appreciate about Barnahus in Reykjavik and Stockholm is the prompt response of the system and really the way formal agreements ensure efficient interagency collaboration. What may be interesting for all of you listening now is to address the differences of our Child and Youth Protection Center of Zagreb compared to the Barnahus model you just heard about. We are a healthcare institution. The reason for that is actually twofold. On the one hand, it was important that we are organized on a state level. All our services are covered by health insurance, and therefore they are free of charge for all children, youth, and families that we work with. And the second reason is that it was raised as a question of mental health, as our main activities are assessment, diagnostics, and treatment, with the aim of protecting children from re-traumatization and providing necessary support and therapy that is needed. Okay, and the other actually differences points to the target group that we work with. It's pretty wide. It has pros and cons. We can discuss it later on if you are interested. We work not only with traumatized children, youth, and their families. So we work with children exposed to sexual abuse and physical abuse, but also with children who are exposed to emotional abuse, who are exposed to domestic violence, who are neglected, as well as I had a child a few days ago, victim of trafficking as well, so it's pretty wide. We also work with children who are at risk of abuse, children who are involved in bullying, children with developmental emotional difficulties, and children in high conflict divorces. We actually have a high number of children referred to us by social services due to the high conflict divorce of their parents, and we see the big impact it has on children, as well as the long-lasting court processes, appeals, allegations, following one by another. It does not make it any easier for children. Okay, that having said, I can try to address your question to Turid and the promised standards that you introduced, referring to multidisciplinary and interagency collaboration. Here on this slide, you can see all the members of our multidisciplinary team, which is consisted of psychologists, psychiatrists, neuropediatricians, social workers, special educators, speech therapists, nurses, and the jurists. So how do we work? Actually, the team is tailored according to the needs of each individual child. For example, that means that the first professional seeing the child actually decides what the other members of the team will be. For example, if we are talking about traumatized children, me as a psychologist can be the first one seeing the child. If we are talking about family dynamics, sometimes domestic abuse cases, social worker can be the first one. If it's a child with behavior problems, learning disabilities, special educator is then on the first front, and also psychiatrists assessing the suicidal risk, and if a child is severely traumatized or involved in self-harming behavior. Usually the first professional expert seeing the child is the case manager, but not necessarily, as we are trying to make a match between the child's needs and difficulties that the child is experiencing and the expert who will be the case manager. We are all members of a team. We all do our assessment. What is important also to point out that we don't do repeated interviews. That's why we have daily team meetings on a daily basis. So, for example, if I'm a psychologist doing a forensic interview with children or seeing the child first, other experts will do their own assessment. For example, neuropediatrician will form medical examination, psychiatrist will assess suicidal risk and the level of traumatization of the child, but they won't repeat, of course, the interview. That's why, so we make our own reports, and then during the daily team meetings, we actually join our forces and we make a joint multidisciplinary report. It is consistent of everything that we found out. Of course, reporting is obligatory to other services as well. You can see here on this slide. And we also do, so we report about our assessment results, but we also make recommendations for the treatment if it's needed, for children and for non-offending family members, caregivers as well. So sometimes we also make recommendations for professionals in schools, children's homes, and kindergartens in needed. So in other words, we make individual plan for each child. And if the treatment is needed, it starts immediately after the interview has made, and after the treatment, usually child and family are included in the follow-up at our center. So we have, apart from daily team meetings that I mentioned, we have supervision twice per month, not only because of the case management that is really important, but also because of the high risk of secondary traumatization and burnout that we are facing in our everyday work. So actually this way of collaboration ensures that we approach every child in an individual manner according to his needs. As we are all permanently employed at the center, it's easy to reach another professional. Daily meetings allow us to discuss cases in details to ensure what are the next steps to work, either in assessment phase or in treatment phase. And to answer also the question that you raised to it, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to work in a multidisciplinary team, and also the responsibility is shared, and each case can be discussed into details. And for example, if I think something is best suiting the child, it doesn't have to be the same thing psychiatrist or social worker thinks it's the best for the child to do next. We have also continuous case tracking. You asked about the data. So we have medical charts for each child that have documentation gathered from other relevant institutions. There we have previous medical reports, social services documentation, demographic data, and we have legal obligations to save the data for 10 years. Of course, all these data are protected according to the privacy protocols we have also here. And we have also a protected computer database where we put data for each child. Actually, this database has more than, it has, I think, about 380 variables in that for each child. So the reason of referral, assessment results, some previous data about the child, but it's it cannot be linked, it cannot be shared with other persons who are not involved in the case. So it's also a matter of privacy, and it also consists of our recommendations for treatment and some follow-up data as well. Okay, and that brings us to the second part of this slide that you can see, where you can see our interagency collaboration. On a daily basis, we cooperate with child welfare centers, other health institutions, with police, state attorneys, judges, but as well as with schools, kindergartens, NGOs, and so on. I would highlight that we have a great cooperation with the police. They are really prompt, well-educated in working with children. And maybe you're also interested in the key challenges that we were facing along the way. We are a healthcare institution, as I mentioned at the beginning, and the standards that are set, we have high standards regarding the number of children we have to assess and include. For example, yesterday I had 6 children and their family members. Here today, due to this webinar, I have only 4. But it can be really a lot. And the main challenge that I wanted to share with all of you is our cooperation with judges, because one of our important work aspects of our center refers to forensic interviewing of children. And when it is not done at the order of the court, the recording cannot be used as an evidence at court. And that's the reason why we encourage judges to interview children on our center's premises. The Croatian law now states that children must be interviewed in child-friendly facilities using video link and an expert who is specifically educated. And we have great cooperation with misdemeanor courts, with judges from misdemeanor courts in Croatia. Those are the courts dealing with domestic violence, false allegations, high conflict divorces, and so on. So we have a formal agreement with them. They really come to our center, and the child is interviewed here by our professional. All other involved parties are present in another room that is connected through video link. It is recorded and can be used as an evidence in court. Therefore, we try to minimize the risk for re-traumatization and shorten the court process. What we really faced is that the main challenge is how to encourage criminal judges. They were not so willing at start to come to us, and really it is a matter of their own will at the moment. They are obliged to interview children in a child-friendly facility using an expert, but they are not obliged to involve our center if they don't want to. But fortunately, the way we try to overcome that challenge is we try to make an emphasis on training involving chambers of judges, attorneys, and other judicial experts through UNICEF projects and other ministry projects to overcome this.
Thank you, Anna Maria. Anna Maria, I think we need to go down to details now and allow for some questions. So in criminal cases, because you allow many groups of children needing support to come to your center. So how do you distinguish the one group from those who will need criminal investigation, police and legal investigations? And how do you act towards that group if the one group goes to the social and therapy and all those things, and then you have the ones who need to be within the system?
Mm-hmm. So you are asking how do we distinguish among the children who come to us not during the criminal process, the court process, but for assessment and therapy, and how do we distinguish those children from the children who are involved already in court proceedings?
Yeah, the question was more, how do you, when you understand this is a case that needs criminal follow-up by the legal system, then you immediately hand them over where?
Yes, yes.
And how do you do that?
We make our report immediately. We immediately involve all other institutions that are relevant. We inform social services and the police. We actually have great cooperation with police. We inform them immediately so that the process, the criminal process, can start as soon as possible. That is the way. That is actually what we are trying to make an emphasis on.
Okay, thank you. Unless you want to comment here. Did you raise your hand? Unless you had? No. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then I think we have heard now so great variety in ways these three different barnahus is working or similar setup like Croatia. And that is what we see in Europe as such now, that some are starting with the target group of children who have been sexually abused and then expanding on the target groups. We also see how the judges increasingly have been trained and involved and taking more and more responsibility. And like in Anna's case, the huge number of children coming from a certain very specific area. We had some questions. There was one from Lubo, and that was to Anna Maria. If your data is shared also with the police and social service is the question.
Yes, I can answer that. So to the police, we don't send our report about all the data to police. We only report what is relevant for them, and we have a protocol. If they are interested in all the data, complete documentation, they have to send official request. And after official request, we then send all our multidisciplinary report as well. And regarding social services, we have a formal agreement with them that we share data that is relevant to that child that is involved. Yes.
Thank you. Then Lubo has a question to all of you. And what is the role? She calls it the jurist. So I would translate to the prosecutor and the defendant lawyer in your team, in the team. Is he, she participating in court hearings, or is he, she responsible to consult the victim about the legal opportunities and options? So giving the word to Olaf first.
The defense lawyer, because when we are interviewing children, it's a court hearing, and you have to think about equality of arms. So that's why the defense lawyer is also participating when we are interviewing a child. The judge, the prosecutor, the police, the child protection service, the defense lawyer, and the child's legal advocate are located in another room and watching the interview through the TV screen. So when a case is reported to the police, a child gets a lawyer which is paid by the government, but they don't have any other rule than taking care of the legal part of the child's case. But they also are with us in the meeting when we are having meeting before we interview the child, especially if we have children with some special needs. They also need to think about the child best with the child protection service. So there is no cooperation directly with the defense lawyer, but they are participating in or watching their interview.
And now to Anders, you have already written your response. Can you repeat it? Yeah?
I think it's very much the same. in the multidisciplinary team meetings, we have the prosecutor who is attending, but then when the kids come to the forensic interview, they have a lawyer or guardian ad litem that take care of their rights, especially when there's the parents who are the suspects. It's very important that they have a guardian that take care of their rights. But we don't, that I think differs from Iceland, we don't have the suspect's defense lawyer at the same time as we're doing the interview. They could do their questions afterwards, but not on the.
Right. And Susanna, she has an additional question to you, Anders. If the guardian ad litem advocate present at the outset, in other words, at the initial interview.
Yes. The guardian is there the first interview. Is that the question?
Yes. So within the initial interview. Yes, and then we have a question for you, Anna Maria. Leah is that
guardian at least?
No, this one is MTD approach, Leah obligation in Croatia. Legal obligation in Croatia, or is it only recommended as a good practice experience?
The way our center is set up, but it is not a legal obligation. It's more of a good practice experience.
Mm-hmm. And then again, it's a question to all of you from Aymar. It seems like there is significant differences whether the process comes primarily under a health or justice authority. I guess the Aymar is referring then to Olaf, where you don't have there you have a psychologist who is responsible for the forensic interview, and related to then Stockholm, where the police is, and also Croatia, where you have psychologists primarily, at least making defining the case for where it should go. Yeah. Okay. Was there any other questions then? Then do we have another poll now, or we will just?
We need to wrap up.
Yeah, we need to wrap up now. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, participants in the webinar. Thank you, the panelists. You did excellent. And I think it is so interesting, the variations, and that we still are, in a way, a living organism. Barnahus is still a living organism, learning from lessons learned all the time, developing, evolving, and finding its form. And now when we have the European Barnahus movement, there is a lot of dynamics going on and exchange of experiences among both the established one, and we get challenged by those coming up from what is the environmental challenges, what are the environmental opportunities. So the good thing to end this with is just this huge dynamics in the field, which make us achieving even better in the best interest of the child. So you know about here we have some. Are we to mention this now?
I think we pass it over to Evgenia.
Yeah, we pass it over to Evgenia to say something about the voting.
Hello again. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation, and Turek to you for the facilitation. Thanks a lot. Yes, I think we have to wrap up now, and I just put 3 very quick polls on the screen. We would like to know your feedback, whether you think the webinar was well prepared, whether you found it interesting, useful, and what are your ideas for the future webinars within this series about Barnahus. And to remind you, if you want a certificate for confirming the attendance of this webinar, please email us at info@childhub.org. I will put it down just a second. Here it is, just drop a line saying you would like a certificate. The recording will be available in a couple of days, and we will have a few more webinars about Barnahus coming in the next fall, starting from September. So please keep an eye on our website and newsletters. And thank you for joining us this afternoon, and have a nice day.